Have you ever wondered what it would mean for a state to secede from the United States? Secession, a word of Latin origin, means to withdraw. But in the context of political science and history, it takes on a more nuanced significance. To secede is for a region or a state to declare its independence from the larger entity to which it belongs. This concept, while simple on the surface, is steeped in controversy, conflict, and complexity. In the United States, the idea of secession is inextricably linked to the country's tumultuous history. The American Civil War, one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history, was fought over the right of Southern states to secede from the Union. But the concept of secession isn't just a historical artifact, it's an idea that continues to hold sway in certain corners of the country. Questions still linger about the legality of such a move, the constitutional implications, and the potential fallout. In this overview video, we will delve into the labyrinthine world of secession. We will explore its historical context from the Civil War to other significant attempts or movements in U.S. history. We will examine the myriad political, economic, social, and cultural factors that could potentially drive a state to contemplate or even pursue secession. We will also consider the multifaceted implications of a state breaking away, including the legal, economic, social, geopolitical, and practical challenges. We will ponder upon the military strategies available to a president facing a secessionist state, and discuss strategies for preserving the integrity of the United States while addressing such movements. This journey is not just about understanding secession as a concept, but also about understanding the very fabric of the United States, a nation built on unity, yet marked by periodic bouts of division. Secession, though a seemingly straightforward concept, holds profound implications for the very fabric of our nation. Secession is not a new concept in American history. Indeed, the most poignant example of secession in the United States is the Civil War, a conflict that tore at the very fabric of the nation. In the mid-19th century, simmering tensions between the North and South over issues like slavery and states' rights reached a boiling point. 11 Southern states declared their secession from the Union, leading to a brutal war that lasted 4 years and claimed over 600,000 lives. The Civil War was not the first or the last time secession was contemplated in America, however. As early as the Revolutionary War, some states, like Vermont, toyed with the idea of secession. In the early 19th century, the Hartford Convention saw New England states threatening to secede over their opposition to the War of 1812. Into the 20th century, secessionist sentiments persisted. The state of Jefferson, proposed in the 1940s by counties in southern Oregon and northern California, is one such example. More recently, movements like Calexit, proposing California's secession, reflect ongoing debates about state autonomy and national unity. But why do these movements occur? They often spring from tensions between regional identities, economic interests, and political ideologies. Whether it's the South's historic reliance on slavery, New England's opposition to a war, or California's progressive politics, these secessionist movements are often a response to perceived threats or challenges to a state's way of life. Yet it's important to note that secession is not a simple or straightforward process. It presents complex legal and constitutional questions. Can a state legally secede from the Union? What would the economic and social implications be? And how would it affect the balance of power within the United States? The historical occurrence of a secession has shaped the United States as we know it today. They remind us of the struggles and debates that have defined the nation's past and continue to influence its future. As we delve deeper into the complexities of secession, it's crucial to keep these historical examples in mind. They offer us valuable insights into the conditions that can lead to such drastic measures, and the profound consequences they can have. Recently, Texas has been in the news for talks of secession. These talks have been largely driven by disagreements over immigration control, a contentious issue that has long divided the Lone Star State from the rest of the country. Texas's unique position on the US-Mexico border has made it a front line in the immigration debate. Some Texans argue that federal immigration policies have failed to address their concerns, thus fueling the desire for greater control over their state borders. These secession talks have elicited a range of reactions. Within Texas, opinions are split. Some see secession as a bold assertion of Texan autonomy and a necessary response to perceived federal overreach. Others view it as a risky and potentially damaging move that could isolate Texas and disrupt its economy. Across the United States, these talks have sparked discussions about the balance of power between states and the federal government. and the limits of state autonomy. The potential implications of Texas's secession are far-reaching. For Texas, secession could mean greater control over immigration, but it could also lead to economic instability and strained relations with other states. For the United States, Texas's secession could set a precedent for other states and potentially destabilize the Union. Texas's recent secession talks highlight the ongoing relevance of this issue. They remind us that the questions raised by secession about state rights and national unity are not just historical curiosities, they are live debates, with real consequences. As we continue to explore the topic of secession, we must grapple with these contemporary examples and the challenges they present. Why would a state want to secede from the Union? A question as complex as the myriad factors that could lead to such a drastic decision. Let's look into these factors, which can be broadly classified into political, economic, social, and cultural categories. Secessionist sentiments are often birthed in the crucible of political dissatisfaction. When a state feels its interests are persistently overlooked by the federal government, or that its political autonomy is being infringed upon, the seeds of secession might take root. This was evident in the lead-up to the Civil War, where southern states felt marginalized by the national government's stance on slavery. Economic factors can also stoke the fires of secession. If a state perceives that it's contributing more to the federal treasury than it's receiving in return, or if it feels stifled by federal economic policies, the allure of economic autonomy could become irresistible. We see echoes of this in the modern discourse, where states rich in resources or with robust economies sometimes voice frustrations about their perceived disproportionate contribution to the national budget. Social issues too play a significant role. Deep-seated societal disagreements can drive a wedge between a state and the rest of the nation. Differences in attitudes towards social issues like gun control, abortion, immigration, and more can create a chasm of misunderstanding and discontent, pushing a state to contemplate secession. Lastly, cultural factors cannot be overlooked. A state with a distinct cultural identity may feel alienated within a larger national framework. When a state's cultural values and traditions seem at odds with the national narrative, the desire to preserve its cultural heritage might tip the scales towards secession. However, it's critical to note that these factors seldom operate in isolation. They intertwine, each amplifying the others, creating a complex tapestry of motivations behind the idea of secession. Understanding these factors is key to engaging with the concept of secession in a nuanced and informed manner. Now let's delve into the complexities that come with a state's decision to secede, discussing the legal, economic, social, geopolitical, and practical challenges that arise. Legally, secession is a tangled web. The U.S. Constitution does not explicitly address the right to secede, leaving us in a murky gray area. The Supreme Court, in the landmark case Texas v. White in 1869, ruled that secession was indeed unconstitutional. However, the question remains, what if a state held a referendum and the majority voted for secession? Would the federal government respect the decision or ignore it? Economically, secession could lead to a whole host of problems. A seceding state would need to establish its own currency, negotiate trade deals, and manage its own economy, a daunting task for any state. Moreover, the rest of the country will suffer from the loss of the seceding state's economic contributions. Socially, secession can lead to a deep divide among the individual's state population. Those in favor of secession and those against it may find themselves at odds, leading to social unrest and potential violence. This division can also have psychological impacts, creating a sense of us versus them that can be difficult to overcome. Geopolitically, a seceding state would have to navigate the international arena as a new, separate entity. It would need to establish diplomatic relations, join international organizations, and possibly even form a military. The geopolitical landscape of the entire country could be altered, affecting foreign policy and international relations. Practically speaking, secession is a logistical nightmare. Consider the infrastructure that would need to be split, the public services that would need to be separately managed, and the laws that would need to be rewritten. It's no small task. The implications of secession are vast and complex, affecting every aspect of life. From the legal uncertainty to the economic upheaval, from the social division to the geopolitical shifts, and the practical challenges, secession is anything but simple. How would the president respond to a state attempting to secede? This question taps into a complex topics of legal, ethical, and strategic considerations. Military intervention is one of the options that could be considered. as nightmarish as that may be. History bears witness to this, most notably in the American Civil War, when President Lincoln used military force to preserve the Union. But this approach is not without its challenges. First, there are legal hurdles. The president would need to navigate the Insurrection Act, a law that permits the use of military force within the United States under specific circumstances. The act requires an insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy that hinders the execution of state or federal law. But would secession meet these criteria? Legal scholars are divided. Then there are the ethical implications. The use of military force will result in loss of life and property, not to mention the potential for long-term social and political fractures. It's a delicate balancing act, preserving the integrity of the nation on one hand and respecting the democratic will of a state's populace on the other. There's also the question of practicality. Military force might suppress a secessionist movement temporarily, but it might also fan the flames of resentment, leading to further divisions and conflict down the line. In this context, the president might consider alternative strategies. These could include diplomatic negotiations, constitutional amendments, or even a peaceful referendum. Ultimately, the choice of military strategy would depend on a range of factors, including the specifics of the secessionist movement, the broader geopolitical context, and the president's own constitutional and ethical commitments. No matter what, it's clear that the decision to use military force in response to secession would be fraught with challenges. It's a decision that would need to be guided by a deep respect for the rule of law, a commitment to democratic principles, and a profound understanding of the potential consequences. Ultimately, deploying the military against their own citizens leaves no victors for the president or anyone involved. How can the United States address secessionist movements while preserving its integrity? This is a question that has challenged the nation's brightest minds throughout history, and still today. In dealing with secessionist movements, the United States must strike a delicate balance. On one hand, it must maintain the unity and integrity of the country. On the other, it must respect the rights of individual states, including their political, economic, and social autonomy. Diplomatic avenues are crucial in preserving this balance. Engaging in open dialogue, finding common ground, and fostering mutual understanding can help to address the root causes of secessionist sentiments. This may include discussions on resource allocation, representation, and the protection of local cultures and economies. Legal options also offer a way forward. The Constitution, in its wisdom, provides mechanisms for resolving disputes among states. The Supreme Court, as the ultimate arbiter of constitutional issues, can play a significant role in addressing secessionist movements. Legal avenues also include revisiting and potentially amending laws in ways that address the grievances of individual states without undermining the Union. Political strategies are another important element. These may involve negotiation and compromise, including potential changes to federal policies or the structure of Congress. It's important to ensure that all states feel fairly represented and that their concerns are heard and addressed at the national level. But let's be clear. Preserving the Union is not just about quelling secessionist sentiments. It's also about building a stronger, more inclusive nation that respects diversity and fosters unity. It's about creating a country where all citizens, regardless of where they live, feel that they are part of the American story. So how can the United States address secessionist movements while preserving its integrity? The solution rests in adopting a fair approach that honors the states' rights while upholding the unity of the Union. This approach requires patience, wisdom, and a deep commitment to the ideals that have made the United States a beacon of democracy and freedom around the world. Confronting secessionist tendencies demands a measured approach that, while acknowledging state rights, fiercely safeguards the unwavering primacy of the Union's integrity above all else. Secession is not the answer. This statement has resonated throughout our exploration of this topic, and it stands as a testament to the myriad of considerations and intricacies involved in the process. We've seen historically the concept of secession from its early American roots, highlighting significant events such as the Civil War. These historical instances reflect a nation grappling with its identity even today, and struggling with the tension between unity and difference, between collective identity and individual sovereignty. We've also delved into the factors that may lead a state to contemplate or even pursue secession. Political, economic, social, and cultural elements all play a part in this intricate dance. A state may feel marginalized or oppressed, its economic interests may be compromised, or it may feel that its cultural identity is being eroded. Each factor adds another layer to the complex tapestry of secession. Moreover, the implications of secession are vast and varied. Legal, economic, social, geopolitical, and practical challenges arise, each requiring thoughtful consideration and careful navigation. From a legal perspective, secession poses questions about the Constitution and the rights of states. Economically, it raises issues about shared resources and financial stability. Socially, it provokes discussions about identity, diversity, and cohesion. Geopolitically, it brings into question the balance of power, both within the nation and on the global stage. And practically, it prompts deliberation on the logistics and feasibility of a state extricating itself from the Union. Our discussion also ventured into the realm of military strategies and the role of the president in the face of a secessionist state. The use of military force, while a possible option, is fraught with legal constraints, risks, and ethical implications. Mastering this intricate terrain entails an unyielding fight, where the paramount objective is to safeguard the nation's unity above all, even while acknowledging the autonomy of individual states. Finally, this struggle casts a shadow over the very fabric of our nation's existence, demanding a precarious equilibrium that threatens to tip the scales toward division and upheaval. The relentless tug-of-war between preserving a unified front and acknowledging the sovereignty of states plunges us into the depths of uncertainty, where the specter of disintegration looms ominously, poised to shatter the fragile harmony we endeavor to maintain. The Founding Fathers envisioned a system where the states would hold considerable governance over the United States, prioritizing state authority over an overpowering federal government. Their design aimed for a balance, emphasizing the state's autonomy as fundamental to the nation's structure, limiting the federal government's reach and power. Failure to maintain the delicate equilibrium between state and federal power risks eroding our freedoms, potentially leading to unchecked government authority that infringes upon individual liberties. Will we see a growing and evolving country of Americans, with the light of freedom showing even more brightly? Or will we see a new country, a new name and bookmark in history that simply says, "Here stood these disunion states of America"?